First, we'll introduce ourselves. I'm Tony Riccono. It's Tom Wolf. We've been kind of off and on for 20 years or something like that. So,
20 years we've been
yeah,
gardening, sort of.
yeah,
We were, were part of, in Knoxville, Tennessee, we were market gardeners. You know, he had a lot bigger garden than we did, but um, still we had overabundance of produce, so we'd take it to the market.
yeah. Fun place to meet people and get rid of some stuff. But anyway, glad you could all come today. We're gonna try to keep this. We're shooting for getting done by 5, maybe sooner. But
There'll be a break.
yeah, there'll be a break. And any uh, any questions you have, feel free to ask. We're not real strict on any of that stuff here. So um, our goal that we want to just teach the basics of gardening. How many of you are gardeners in here? Everybody have a gardener every year? Okay. Um, we're trying to stay pretty basic, but we're going to talk about some soil amendments. We're going to talk about different planting schedules, things of that nature. We want to talk about weed and pest control, the little bugs that come out every year. Tillage and just planting your garden. I mean, everyone here, I'm assuming they have a spot already picked out and they've been gardening there for probably several years, but maybe some of you are just starting out and just want to know which direction to go in. So we'll do that. And another goal that we have is to teach you how to be economical with your gardening, where you don't have to go out and buy all these amendments and everything else to keep your garden going, that you just have your seeds every year. Want to encourage everyone to save their seeds at the end of the year so that they can use them the next year. So those are some of the things that we like to teach. I mean, I know Tom has been, well, me too, very economical over the years. You try to use everything that you have on your place, to make your garden better every year. So you're not spending, you can spend tons of stuff on fertilizers and all that. Little scripture to start with before we get started. I found it in Proverbs 24, and it's verse 27. It says, "Prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house." So as what that's saying is, get that garden going first, because that's what's going to be feeding you, and then build your house. So God has those principles throughout his word, and we like to stick with that, especially in gardening. I mean, God wanted us to all be gardeners from the beginning. So that's a direction that we want to head in.
And I was wanting to share with you a New Testament scripture where Jesus tells a little parable about uh, this fellow that is going to cut down a tree that's not producing. He said, cut it down. And he said, the worker said, no, let me dig around it and dung it, put fertilizer around it and see what it'll do. And if it doesn't work, we'll cut her down. And we've experienced that ourselves with a tree that was in our backyard that I kept saying, I want to cut down, because it's in the way of the tractor, trying to get the tractor in and out of the barn. And Diana went out there and put all kinds of, amendments around it and things like that. And that next year, I mean, it was a persimmon tree, wild persimmon. And that next year, the all the branches were just bent over full of persimmons.
Yeah.
So, there's things that we can do that can bring things back to life. And even one time I like my chickens to run free. You know, I'd let them out at 4 o'clock every day. Diana didn't like them getting in the garden, and I said, they ain't gonna eat much. And we had an arugula that was on its way out. I mean, it was dying, and of course, the chickens got around it and was, I guess, getting the bugs that was trying to eat that arugula, and the next thing you know, that arugula was this tall, and so there's things that can happen that we just need to leave alone and let nature take its course.
Yeah, amen. Amen. All right, the first thing we were going to address, and I was going to mention too, I know we're focused in on garden plants and things of that nature, but we do have some experience with orchards and vineyards and berries and things like that. So if you have any questions, just ask, because those are all things that we like to have on our place. Let's talk about the garden plan for a minute. I don't know what you all are using. Are you just using spaces? Are you growing in boxes? Different things like that. Anybody?
Grow boxes.
Yeah, chime in. Grow boxes? Grow boxes, okay. Pardon?
Raised beds.
Raised beds, okay, raised beds, okay. So that's, I find that for the beginning gardener or even those that have been gardening for years, those are pretty easy to maintain because you don't have all the weeds. When you start growing on a big patch like an acre or 2 acres or something like that, then you've got a whole different dynamic then. But with grow boxes, you don't have to have all the expensive equipment and everything else to maintain it. So it's a good way to go.
Yeah, just a
forward.
shovel.
Yeah, just a shovel, that's right.
Yeah, one of the things is make sure that you've got plenty of sunlight,
Yes.
where you're getting at least 8 hours of sunlight a day. And and this is one thing, I call myself the 20-year apprentice gardener, because you're learning every year something new.
Yeah.
And
Successes and failures every year.
yeah.
Yeah, every time. So
And I can remember in 2007, there was no rain. We were 17. This is where I lived in Tennessee. 17 inches behind on the rain. The grass was like Rice Krispies, and which I didn't mind that at all. But I had to water my garden constantly. Well, the next year in 2008, everything was normal. But then in 2009, there was 17 inches more rain than normal. I mean, we had flood outs and flood outs and flood outs. So it's a learning curve in gardening. And so you need to know where to put your garden, where to place it.
okay. And this may seem very simple and elementary, but obviously when you're going to put your garden in somewhere, your beds or whatever, you want to be close to a water source. I don't know if any of you have drug out those hoses and stuff, but some people have 100 foot of hose or 200 feet of hose to get their water down there. That may not have been the best plan for your garden. I mean, the easier you can get it there, the better. Or if you're carting water out by hand, you don't want to have to walk, 100, 200 feet with buckets of water in your hands. So that's the first thing. Then start deciding what you're going to plant. This is a good time to, actually, January is a great time to start deciding and ordering from your seed catalogs and stuff what you want to put in the ground. So, and my suggestion is just to keep it simple. Don't order everything they got in the seed catalog because it looks good, because that's what in a seed catalog like this and Johnny's, they make everything just look as beautiful as it can be. And you want to order all that stuff, but try to keep it simple and basic, because you're going to have a lot more success if you stay that way. If you try to do a lot of different things that you haven't done before, then you're probably going to have some failures out there. So keep it simple, grow the things that you like to eat, and then go from there. Go ahead.
And heirloom, you were probably
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
heirloom seeds are the best because, heirloom plants, because the seed you can use the next year. You can gather the seed. Hybrid is not bad, as long as it's not a GMO.
Yeah, but you're not gonna be able to use those seeds, the hybrids, the next year.
Oh, yeah, anyway, yeah.
Because they're gonna come up, they're gonna start reverting to what they were crossed with. And then you're gonna have some problems. But the heirloom seeds, open pollinated, you're always gonna have better success. You can save your seeds and use them for the next year. Yes. Normally you dry them out, airtight container, and then a lot of times you put them in the freezer. Because that gives them the seed the perception of overwintering. And then you pull them out the next year and use them. Now, if you put them in the freezer for 4 or 5 years, your germination rate's gonna go down. So, but that's a good way to do it. But make it an airtight container though. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, it sort of tricks the seed, thinking that, it was outside or whatever, and it got that winter freeze to it, and it'll come back. It'll start making.
Okay, so know your frost dates, when you can put certain things in the ground. There's a difference between the hardy plants, semi-hardy, and the tender plants out there. It's probably not a good idea to try to plant corn in April because it's not going to germinate. But you can plant broccoli, cauliflower, some lettuces, kale, things of that nature. So you can get that started then. And then when the ground warms up, a lot of these tender plants, they want 70-degree soil to get started. Some of them, like your squashes and your watermelons and stuff, they need like 80 degrees to get started. So that's important to know on that. Any questions on the planting? It's since you're using box gardens, you can get out there. You can, let's say you have 6 boxes. You can want 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 out there, and then plan what you're going to put in each one of those boxes. And then decide whether you're going to succession plant after that. So if you have a crop that's growing up, like you've grown your cabbages or your broccoli or anything, and that goes out, then have something in mind that you can put in afterwards, like lettuces, things that clean the soil afterwards, because a lot of those things the cold crops can be heavy feeders sometimes. Yeah. So you need to do that.
One of the things that we found out in market gardening is that we had what we didn't sell. If we didn't can it, then we would compost it. And I found out in my grow beds, I never did this in the big gardens. We had big gardens that was 40 by 150, and then 2 of them that were 35 by 70.
Mm-hmm.
And but we had 16 grow beds, and in those grow beds, I started taking the compost. Mm-hmm. Instead of putting it in the compost pile, I would dig a hole in that and put the compost right in the grow bed. And of course, that's another thing too. If we found out that you have to if you're going to build raised grow boxes, then it's best to put some hard cloth, wire underneath, because voles and moles and everything will tunnel their way up and destroy your crop. So that's just
while we were talking about succession planning a little bit, you always want to make sure in those beds. I don't know how many beds do you have? You have one bed, two beds, some of you, three, two beds. It's good to, let's say if you plant tomatoes in one of the beds, and normally those nightshades, they're prone to carrying disease a lot of times. They'll blight out, do things like that. Then you need to follow it with something that's going to kind of clean the soil up, like a lettuce or some kind of a cover crop that you could put in there so that it gets that disease out. Always make sure and aerate those beds real good. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a broad fork that you can fork it with. You can put it in there, or you can use a potato fork too.
Yeah.
Just get it in there and turn that soil so it gets good and aerated, for the next planting. And that keeps it more disease and bug free too, if you're doing that. But you want to always, a lot of your heavy feeders like corn, squash, tomatoes, things like that, you want to follow up with something that's a light feeder, like a beets, carrots, a lot of root crops are light feeders. Or you can put in soil builders, peas, beans, any kind of legume, after that. I mean, it just gives you kind of an idea without getting too complicated.
All right, Tom's got a question.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a comment real quick,
Okay.
and that's we're going to have these handouts. You don't have to memorize everything we say. We're going to have some handouts for you to go by. This is what we're going by, and you'll be able to have. They'll be free. Go ahead.
According to biblical understanding,
go ahead.
you're supposed to leave your garden follow, for a year. After 7 years, correct?
Yes.
Do you suggest that? And then the other question I have with that is, I just lost it, so maybe I'll think of it in just a minute. I'm sorry about that. Oh, yeah. What I've done, I plant rye.
Yes.
In the heavy feed,
A
heavy.
winter rye, yeah.
Yeah. And then turn it under, in the spring.
You can do that. You
And-
can do buckwheat. You can do red clover, crimson clover, things of that nature, anything. Your clover and beans and stuff, they will actually fix nitrogen in your soil,
Right.
with the roots and stuff. So you can put those things in there. And to answer your question, we always followed the 7-year rule too on letting the ground rest. Just a blessing, and you can take a break for a year, especially if you're doing the kind of gardening and farming that we were doing.
Right.
It's always good to take a break.
Okay.
But yes.
But I found out that every year I have all these volunteers, and that's what's going to happen in that 7th year. I mean, you don't have to work that soil. I believe that it was intended, God's intention was to have that 7th year go to people who don't have gardens, who don't have, that are poor and don't have the means of that food, and they can harvest that food, what comes up voluntarily.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Tom's going to talk about the soil a little bit now.
Soil.
Yeah.
It's the most important part. That's why I said that about digging around it. Digging around it gives oxygen down into the soil, and then it gets the fertilizer down into the soil. And you'll have this handout. So in North Georgia, this is zone 7 and 7B and 8. And the last chance of frost in the spring in the Blairsville area is May 21 through 31. And which is, there's some things that you don't, that's crops that are, susceptible to frost, like tomatoes. I remember one time in Tennessee, it our last time of frost was April 15th. So after April 15th, we started planting our squash and our tomatoes and stuff like that. And 3 weeks later, May 7th, here come a frost and wiped them out.
So I said, and Tom lived about 70 miles south of me. I lived up on the plateau, and it was totally different. I may have to wait past May 15th before I could plant anything that was tender. And then still we'd get one last frost that would kill something off. And so you don't want to jump the gun on things unless you've got some covering for it.
And there was a fellow that told my brother one time that don't plant anything that's in a month that has an R in it. Go ahead, John.
I've learned from experience that actually, if you're planting tender plants like corn and that kind of things, that's real susceptible to frost. Here in the Blairsville area, it's better to wait till after May the 10th.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
LJ, where I live, I live in LJ, me and my wife, and that's our last days are May 1 through 10. So we're a little further down the mountain from y'all here. One of the things that I wanted to bring out with the soil is because some vegetables will tolerate freezing temperatures. That's like your broccolis, your cauliflowers, and other. And you wouldn't believe it, but lettuce. I've had lettuce and kale and different ones that lasted right through the winter. It would freeze, those plants froze. I mean, and I'd go out there and pick. Of course, we had a row 50 feet long, and it'd be like popping off popsicles or something. They were froze solid, but you get them in the house and just let them thaw out, cut them up, and put them in the pot. But it says that as soon as the soil can be worked, you can put in broccoli and cabbage and onions and peas and radishes and rutabagas and spinach. Spinach will go right through the winter. Turnips, other vegetables like beets, carrots, cauliflower, lettuce, some lettuces. Swiss chard can be planted 2 to 4 weeks before the last frost date. Now later on, we're going to tell you how to extend your growing time. But first thing you need to do is get you a soil testing kit. And the information on here, you can order it from there, or you can go to your extension agency here in the county. Only the county is going to be looking for NPK. That's the chemical
Nitrogen.
nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash. So that's basically what they're looking for. They're not going to tell you about what I'm about to tell you, because there's one company that's called Fedco Seeds, is where you can order some of the stuff I'm about to tell you about. And then if you don't, you can get shovels and forks. I mean, all the different tools that you're going to need, hoes and rakes and things from anywhere, right down here at Home Depot. But kelp meal, that's one thing, and I can't believe it, but I saw it in Walmart. Some of these amendments that I'm about to tell you about, Walmart is getting on the organic
Bandwagon.
Yeah, bandwagon. So kelp meal was in Walmart. So was azomite. And here's some of these things. This is azomite. It's a volcanic soil that has minerals and all kinds of stuff. You can look at it later. But that was in Walmart. Or you can order it online. But kelp meal is rich in all kinds of nutrients, including nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. These nutriments are essential for plant growth. Kelp meal is brown seaweed harvested and processed at low temperatures, dried and ground up. And I've been using it for years. And I'm not going to go into how much you'll figure that out by how much you've got to how much to use. You know, like if you've got a 100 square foot of garden, and most of everything that you're going to grow is going to be within the 6 to 8 inches. So it's not like you have to have, fertilizer from the bottom of your grow box to the top of it. I mean, it's just in that first 8 to 10 inches. You can make a foliar spray out of it, and that's a simple way of supplying the trace minerals, is to just put it in water, let it sit, and then strain it off for like 3 days, then strain it off, and then just spray it on the plant. And because here's the thing, in this little book here is the most incredible little book that I've ever read, and tells about how the air has nitrogen. Okay. It has all the trace minerals as in the air, but there has to be a balance of the soil for your plant to absorb that. And there, it talks about sugar, and we're going to talk about sugar later, I guess, instead of right this second. But when you get this balanced, and I don't know whether you've ever noticed when you've gardened before that you can water something, you know, well water or rainwater is good stuff. But when it rains, it sucks that nitrogen down, sucks the minerals out of the air and puts them in the ground. And your plants, I go out and they look like they've grown 3 inches.
I know you noticed it, that there's nothing better than God's watering system. When it rains, those plants really take off.
Yeah. Azomite is another one. It's a natural mineral substance, which is mined directly from, it's a Utah desert source. And it is for remineralizing the soil. And that's one of the things that I think is I've made it my goal, is to help every farmer or gardener. You don't have to be a farmer, but a gardener. You know, we don't need to be taking supplements. We need to be remineralizing our soil so that there'll be the vitamins and minerals that we need in the food we eat. And that's
Yeah, it's like the same thing with our bodies. Everyone's trying to get well by taking all the supplements and stuff. Well, why not get well by eating? Yeah. I mean, let your food be your medicine, Hippocrates.
And now here's an example. I use calcium carbonate for my lime. Okay. And you put it on in the fall, and the plant absorbs that. Okay. But when you look on your carton of milk or carton of this or whatever, when you look at those ingredients, and it says 30% more calcium, you know, and it's calcium carbonate. And by taking it, you can't absorb it. It goes right into your joints.
Yeah, we get our calcium from our plants, you know, the plant food that we eat.
The greens.
Yes.
All right. And in here, in this little handout, you're going to find out how to use that calcium carbonate, and might have to find it. Now here's something that I'm going to be giving away. I got a little bit, being from Tennessee, I didn't live but maybe 4 or 5 hours
Yeah,
from
about 4 hours.
from Columbia, Tennessee, where they mine Tennessee brown rock. What they do is they're mining phosphate, making superphosphate or triple superphosphate, which you don't need that. Don't buy that. Don't put it in your soil. What you need is a mineral that can work with the microbes. See, once you get all those microbial bacterias and the different bugs that's supposed to be in your soil, here's a little something I was telling him earlier about nematodes that my grandson looked up on the internet. He was 10 years old. I mentioned nematodes. I said, we need to get some nematodes and put them in the garden. And he said, I saw something about nematodes the other day. He's 10 years old, you know. And so I said, can you find that? And he looked it up. And what it was research that they're doing with the microbes in the soil and the bugs in the soil and what the plant does. All right. They had this corn growing, just a little corn, not that big, but they had these chambers where they were separated, and there was a bug that was going to eat that corn, you know, some kind of worm. All right. The worm,
Which is what a nematode is.
well,
Is a type of worm, but
yeah, it's a type of
microscopic.
worm.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's a beneficial worm.
Yes.
And then on this other, it's like, it was like this, you know, it was, the corn was in the middle, and then they had this little tube that went out to the nematodes and a little tube that went out to the worm. The worm could smell that and went and started to attack that corn. And that corn started calling for help. And it's incredible. And so anyway, the nematodes heard the call, and like a pack of wolves, they came down the tube and killed that worm. There's actually plants that will change completely what they are in order to fool the bugs. And so
Yeah, it's really pretty fascinating. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
if you start reading that side of it, I know not everyone's interested in the little bugs and things that are in their soil, but it's, you know, God's put stuff there that is just totally fascinating.
and when it's balanced, when everything in the soil is balanced and your plant is growing and it's getting the nutriments from the air, bugs don't want it because there's sugar. And this is what we're going to show you about the sugar with these, because I got a refractometer here, and that is a tool that you can test to see how much sugar is in your food.
Which correlates to the mineralization of the soil. The sugar does.
Yeah.
You know, it shows your different minerals then.
Have you ever bought something and you took it home and you was really looking forward to eating it, and then it was yuck? You know, it's because the sugar content was low, and they don't, you know, the balance of the soil was not right. They just grew it on the NPK, and NPK will grow a vegetable.
And just to summarize some of the stuff that Tom's saying, look at your soil in your garden as a bank.
Yeah.
And you're putting these amendments in as part of your savings account. And then when you put your plants in, they're drawing from that savings account. So you want to continue to put amendments in each year to build your soil up. But these are like rock powders. So it's the microbes that are breaking it down and making it available for the plant. So we want to keep that bank full every year so that our
Right.
plants are as healthy as they can be.
Amen.
Got a question here.
Marty? Oh. No, Mark.
Either way.
Anyway, no,
Marty.
Talk about enough.
I can show it.
Yeah, on the raised beds we put in last year, really didn't hear us our first year. And getting soil here, I bought what they call mushroom mulch
Mhm.
down the road.
Mm-hmm.
It came out that it was really hot,
Yeah,
honestly.
Burn the
And
plants
also
up.
It was too hot.
yeah, burn
Yeah.
the plants
Some
up.
stuff grew,
Yeah.
but not good. So now my garden's, I don't know, I wanna put something on top of that, okay? I don't want more of that. It's too hot in my mind. What would you top off your boxes with? Now mine are down like 8 inches. I mean, that's, cause they're deep.
Okay, yeah,
So I probably don't need a bunch, but I'm gonna put by Miracle Grow and all kinds of stuff. I
yeah.
don't,
And
I wanna know what to get to top off my.
right, what kind of soil or, well,
Yeah, I mean, you could get a soil from around here. I mean, it's pretty tough, but you might be just as well off getting some sphagnum, peat moss,
sphagnum,
and then mix it in with that. And then that gives, the worms really like eating
sphagnum
it.
moss.
Yeah, eating that kind of stuff up anyway and converting it to, worm castings and better soil. And, but you want to make sure and mix it all in real good and the sphagnum's going to hold water for you better. You're not going to drain out.
So it's like a peat moss control or something.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were selling some stuff down there. We stopped in the other day. And it was like crushed up little sticks and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't want that. That's a
what I
pain.
wondered. He goes, hey, use this, man. It's great stuff. And I'm going,
Yeah. I mean, it's good for like, aeration and watering and stuff when
Yes.
you get those things in, and it will break down, but if it's got sticks in it, it's gonna take longer to break down. Yeah.
so it's like a peat moss on top. mix it
Yes.
in,
Yeah.
And then go with your stuff you were talking about.
Yeah. And then just mix it in.
And then go with the
Yeah.
minerals and
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah, when you're using these, you don't have to use a lot.
Yeah. Different rock powders.
Yeah, like this Tennessee brown rock. Let me read this real quick. It is considered the premier phosphate in the United States today. It is beneficial to wheat, corn, and many row crops. Best applied according to a soil test. That's why we have to have a soil test. But if you have not tested your soil and believe that phosphorus is low, a suggestion of 75 pounds per 1,000 square feet. Well, we're not going to do that. I'm going to tell you your Tennessee brown rock that you're going to get today, a tablespoon per 1 foot of growth of the plant. Boron the same way. Boron is borax. It's same thing as 20 mule team.
Yeah,
boron.
20 mule power.
Yeah.
Yeah. Laundry detergents. That's exactly.
Yeah,
exactly
you
what-
find that in Walmart. It's pure boron. And your body really needs boron. You don't get boron. There's no, I guess you can take a pill, but
Another more expensive form of the rock phosphate is like bone meal.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, but that starts costing you a lot of money after a
Mhm.
while. This, like I said, puts into your bank. The other is more readily available if you're wanting to get
Something going.
jump started. But I would go to this if
Mhm.
I could do it.
All right.
Can I talk?
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
Sorry, forgot.
All right. Mine may be a little more simple or more difficult. I've got a couple boxes and I plant tomatoes. They go real well, and then a fungus or blight starts hitting them midsummer
Mhm.
and they're gone,
Yeah.
And I've been reading up on it and I find out it's probably got a bad fungus in the soil.
Yeah. That's why the rotation.
Yeah.
So, but I've been reading up on it. It says you can fumigate the fungus out of the soil. You get these fumigation tents and so on. I don't want to go that route. You know, I'm just a simple
Well, I
guy.
mean, if it's killing the fungus, what else is it killing is what
Yeah, well,
my
I've
thought
got
is.
creek bottom soil.
Yeah, uh-huh.
I got good soil, great
Yeah.
soil. But anyway, how do you suggest to deal with this fungus? Because it happens every year, and I should plant it in a different place, I guess. But because you know, I
That-
do my beans, my squash, everything is fine. You
Mhm.
know, just
Yeah.
grows great. But the tomato plants get hit with this fungus.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. I mean, all it has to do is, in the past, when I've dealt with that, because I used to grow 300, 400 tomato plants at once,
Yeah,
and a lot of times pruning before it gets up the plant,
right,
start to do that. But
Take the bottom leaves off.
right. Don't touch the soil.
Yeah.
In other words, let
Yeah.
clean them out. Yeah,
but the only thing that
and even watering,
it
I don't. You know, I
water the
don't
leaves
splash it. I
Don't
just
water the plant.
until it
Water the
rains.
soil.
right, right.
Until it rains, and then that's
Yeah,
what
then that-
splashes it up on the plant.
Exactly. So I don't know what to do. Do I cover the soil, with the mulch? I just,
I think
it's very frustrating gardener
and
here.
you've got what, 2 beds? Is that what you got? Is 2 beds? You might want to start with a 3rd bed for your tomatoes because it's hard to get that stuff out of there so that you
Yeah.
can have a good rotation.
Initially, I thought it was cutworms or, something
Yeah.
like that because I got, excuse me, I got a few of those around too.
Yeah, that early blight and late blight
Yeah.
they're
Okay.
tough.
Well, if you come up with a sure cure, let me know.
I know some people will use, some of the growers used to use hydrogen peroxide and spray on there to cut it off, but you still got it in your soil. So somehow you've got to,
There are organic fungicides and different things that you can find at the co-op.
yeah, copper sulfate's one
Copper
that
sulfate.
will take care of some of that stuff. Yeah.
And y'all were talking about, I heard him say that he had some stuff in his mushroom compost. Sister Fairland and Brother Phil had the same stuff in a bunch of mushroom compost they got delivered down there and such as to them. And they had to end up digging it all out. Just to agree with y'all, it's best if you can get a sample even before you buy this stuff because
Yeah.
there is fungus and stuff going around. A lot of this mushroom compost around here, I would not buy it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, some of it's so hot too. I mean, it would be like, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's, it just hasn't been baked down. That's the problem. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And there is a world of information out there. I do Instagram, and Instagram has, if you start punching in gardening, I mean, there are people on there that's their life. And there's one guy that uses what he calls cow dirt. It's some kind of cow manure mixed with dirt, soil. And so he swears by it, and that's what he grows everything in there.
Let's say you're gonna start a new garden now, this area. You want to put it, you can get your box filled up. What do you start with if you don't want something that hot? I bet. Probably dirt around here. You can buy it.
Let's, go ahead. You got
Oh.
something to add there, John?
I think I can answer part of that question for him. When you first start your box, I like to go by, you can buy it's shredded bark. And I put a layer about 4 to 5 inches deep in my box. And then I build on top of that. And that will eventually break down, rot down, as whatever you want to call it. And then you add what you're going to use. Oh, I know what you got into over there. What you should have bought is a product that they sell over here. It's called soil conditioner. It's a mix of bark, dirt, and mushroom compost. Now that generally you can plant straight in, but you don't want to put straight mushroom compost because there is a lot of ammonia in that stuff and it will burn your plants up. I mean, absolutely burn them
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Now, on Tom's problem over there, it's always important, and your ag man can help you with this. It's always important to identify what fungal problem you're having. One thing that I had for a long time, and a lady that's no longer with us, Mary Jones, she told me, she said, I can tell you how to remedy that. She says, just when you put out your tomato plant, put you about a tablespoon of powdered milk around them at the same time because it's a calcium deficiency and it will result in what they call blossom end rot. And that's where the tomato begins. You'll have a tomato coming on. It looks really beautiful. But then as it begins to ripen, the blossom end of that, the bottom end of it, not the stem end, the bottom end of that tomato will begin to rot.
What
It's
about,
called-
what about the plant, John? I mean, he was talking about his plant blighting up.
Oh yeah, well, you have to either
Yeah.
put you something down when you put your plant in the ground. You need to put some kind of a cover on the ground so that the dirt doesn't splash up on your plant, and that and your plant doesn't touch the dirt,
Yeah,
because that's really what causes that early blight.
okay.
And I've seen where they put black cover in the spring and then change it to red when it gets hot, you know, to where it's not so hot on the ground. But I have had this problem, the hurricanes. You know, we don't get hurricanes up here to tear anything up, but they will send 3 days of rain. And if you haven't been putting 3 days of rain on your tomatoes all along,
It's gonna splash. Yeah.
I'm telling you, it will split your tomatoes up. It's a bummer. And yeah,
Yeah.
the tomato itself, it'll grow so fast it'll split.
Okay, we've got a question back here
No, I
or
have a,
comment.
yes. Well, have you all heard of the Back to Eden garden?
Yes.
Well, we planted one years ago and we just had 4 inches of mushroom compost and 4 inches of the mulch. And we put the paper up under that first, and then we put the compost, and then we put the mulch. And I'm telling you, right here in Blairsville, those plants grew so beautifully.
Mhm.
And all you do is push back the bark, you know, the mulch, and just plant your seed. And it just comes up and just beautiful. And the food was great. We were able to juice the carrots and the things, the green things. And I had kale all throughout the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And lettuce too. They just told me to water the lettuce.
Yeah.
But
Very
you didn't
good.
have to water the garden.
We should,
Yeah, I'm,
ready to move on to the tillage.
yes.
Okay. Any more questions on soil? I mean, we're, you know,
Like I said,
okay. we
you'll
got-
find all this information in these handouts. Read them. It's not really rocket science, but sometimes when you read some of this stuff, people that have been studying this all their life, like this guy, Jerry Travers, that's the handouts you're going to get from him today. And it just, you follow those guidelines and your soil will be, a balanced soil. Your plants will come out. They'll be sweet. They'll taste good. And
Okay, go ahead, John.
I want to sum up everything you guys have been saying. It's called feed the soil, and the soil will feed your plant.
Amen. Amen. Yeah, that's a lot better. All right, here's a question.
Just one quick question. The Tennessee brown rock you said, and is it a tablespoon to every, how many feet?
1 foot of growth. Like if you've got a plant that's grown up a foot, you put just a tablespoon around it. You don't need a lot. And there's other things, boron and different things that you can put around your plant as it grows. And you can even,
just sprinkle it around.
and you can spray the plant too.
Okay.
And,
Okay, going to talk about tillage for a minute. Like I said, most of you have told me that you're doing raised beds, box gardens. So your tillage is either going to be with a shovel. I mean, I suppose you could have a little mantis tiller or something like that, but it's either going to be a shovel or a broad fork of some sort that you're going to use to break up the soil. It's very important that you get oxygen in the soil. If you don't, then you start developing anaerobic bacteria, and that's what's going to cause your blights and things of that nature. So make sure you're breaking it up, and you want to do it through the entire season, because when you water, a lot of times that soil has a tendency to compact, and then it's not getting the air and water down that it needs. So you've got to keep working that soil. You can't just throw a seed in the ground, walk away, and have beautiful plants and food from it after a while. You've got to put some effort into it, but it's that part of it's a blessing. I mean, even though we're getting older and stuff, we're still bending down and doing things of that nature. So you're getting the benefits from it.
basically use 3 tools, and that's a shovel and a hoe and a rake.
Yeah, for those of you who don't have raised beds and you're just doing a regular garden, a lot of times we have a tendency to go out there with our tiller and turn it up, and it makes the soil look real pretty and everything else, but you put a hard pan underneath that is like walking on a road. And if you don't break that up, your roots aren't going to go down the way they need to, and then pretty soon they're going to start getting disease and things of that nature because you're not getting the air.
Speaking of the roots, I didn't know this until a few years ago, that in the northern hemisphere, your roots are going to grow to the north. Okay, the electromagnetic field, and that's another thing that we need to talk about is everything is run off of electricity, everything. So when you plant your plants, either give them enough space between them. If you're doing north and south, if that's the only choice you have, really you need to be running east and west, because your roots will be wanting to go north, and you don't want them to take away from the one in front of them. And then, that if they've all in a row. So
Just to give you a little bit of trivia to where that all makes sense. How many of you have got fruit trees in here? Anybody plant fruit trees? A few? I had somebody tell me a long time ago that whenever you plant a fruit tree, that knot that's on there from the graft, you always want to point that north. Because if you don't, that tree is going to spend its entire lifetime and energy trying to turn to magnetic north when it's going in the ground. So very interesting concepts. So, but it keeps them from having to work too hard, and then you get better results then. Let's see. We've already talked about
amendments.
Yeah, we talked about amendments. What kind of things are you all planting, just to get an idea? You plant corn, cabbage.
Basil, I've already started all that, seeds.
Okay. So are you starting them in like a seed, a cell? Okay, very good. Super.
I do microgreens.
Yeah, you can save so much money if you're doing that yourself, but you've got to have you know, you've got to set it up initially, but then have the grow lights and things like that, but you could get a lot of enjoyment out of it.
You've got a bay window or some
Yeah.
south
absolutely.
facing window.
But like, I mean, it says, you know, to put out, I don't know exactly when we put them out here, but.
Yeah, onion sets, you can get by with cold weather, putting them out. They're not gonna, you know, onions are tough. You know, it's just like if you're planting garlic or onions for the next year, your big yellows and stuff, you can plant those in the fall. And they'll overwinter and they'll kind of make their root system and stuff. And then when it gets warm, you know, you're ready to harvest in, you know, late May, early June. What's the last frost date around here? I'm kind of new down in this area, so,
Yeah, this is 21.
They say it's after Mother's Day.
yeah, sometimes you can get by with putting those potatoes out earlier, but you might get that late frost, so you know, you're gambling on it.
Need a row
Yeah.
cover to cover them up so that the frost doesn't kill.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, Tom.
Couple years I grew gourds. And, cause I'm a bird lover.
Yeah.
But also it's a cash crop because I paint them, fixed them up, and sold them at a garage sale.
Yeah, wonderful.
So, I mean, it's very fun.
Yeah,
It's a fun plant because they'll climb up, you know, just all kinds of places in your garden. So you got these gourds hanging all over.
yeah. You had a question?
Cucumbers, eggplant, string beans. We got beautiful plants and little buds, and that was it. We never got the cucumber.
And a lot of times that would be a phosphate deficiency. He was talking about the,
Too much nitrogen.
yeah, too much nitrogen and not enough of the things that build a good fruit. Phosphate builds your fruit. You know, so when he talks about the Tennessee brown rock phosphate, or we're talking about bone meal and things like that, that's what's going to help with your fruit development on your plant. Any other questions? Now, we're at 4 o'clock. Did we want to take a break for a minute?
Yeah, I was gonna say, them girls gonna feed y'all right now?
If you're interested in that. Everybody's always interested in food, but yeah, go ahead.
Good to put in mix in with your dirt. Are there any pros or cons to that?
Go ahead.
Yeah,
You kind
yeah.
of researched that a little bit.
I used to go clean out rabbit houses. And as long as you didn't put it on too heavy, it did fine. But I did find out later on that there is a difference between clean animal manure and unclean animal manure. Like cow manure, cow is a clean animal. Okay.
We're talking according to Bible
According to
principles.
the Bible principle of clean and unclean.
Okay.
So their manure, and they found out that, and they found out, sorry. They found out that the unclean only gives about 50% of what its
Of the
potential is.
The nitrogen and the,
Yeah.
yeah, everything else.
The clean manure will give around 80%. They said the cleanest manure, animal manure, clean animal manure is deer. And so
Which you don't want in your garden. For obvious reasons.
so yes, there is a difference between the manures. Chicken is a clean, but it'll burn it up. If it
Yeah,
is,
it has to be composted. If
it
it's
has to be
chicken.
composted a year or more.
And that was something I was gonna bring out. I know, you know, Purdue Farms, obviously, they're nationwide. But they make a composted chicken manure in pellet form. And a lot of these outfits, maybe even Walmart now, are carrying it. And that's another way to get it because it is composted. You don't ever want to put any of that stuff next to your plant.
Yeah.
You want to put it out around it so that it'll trickle
Mhm.
down to the roots. But
Even the clean animals, you don't put fresh manure on.
no.
It
it's
has to
just-
be composted down.
Yeah. This little girl had a question.
Can you start planting the scallion onions?
Yes, you can start planting onions now. Yeah, they're pretty hardy. Good question. Shall we take a break a minute and then we'll come back and we can all walk around, stretch.
Some
a minute?
refreshments back here in the back.